The cargo ship Stellar Dawn drifted through the cold darkness of space like a metal whale swimming through an endless ocean. Inside the ship, warning lights blinked red and yellow across the control panels. The air smelled of burned circuits and old coffee. Captain Vextar stood in the bridge, his tall reptilian form casting long shadows under the dim emergency lighting. His golden eyes studied the readouts with growing concern. The plasma defense system had been acting up for 3 weeks now. Every day brought new problems. Today the targeting computer crashed twice, and yesterday the power coupling nearly melted. "Nari," he called through the ship's communication system. His voice carried the deep, rumbling tone that all Saurians possessed. "How long until we reach the trading station?" "6 hours, Captain," came the reply from the engine room. The voice belonged to Kim Nari, the only human aboard the ship. She had joined the crew 6 months ago, and Vextar still wasn't sure what to make of her. Humans were strange creatures. They looked fragile with their soft skin and small size, but they possessed an odd kind of strength. Nari stood barely 5 feet tall, with short black hair and dark eyes that seemed to see everything. She wore a simple gray jumpsuit covered in grease stains and tool marks. Vextar walked through the narrow corridors of his ship. The Stellar Dawn was old but reliable, like most cargo vessels that worked the outer rim routes. The walls were lined with pipes and cables, and everything had the worn look of equipment that had seen decades of use. He found Nari in the weapons bay, lying on her back under the plasma cannon. Sparks flew from above as she worked with some kind of tool. The plasma cannon was supposed to be a simple mining laser designed to break up asteroids, but Nari had been modifying it for months. "What are you doing down there?" Vextar asked. "Fixing the power regulator," Nari replied without stopping her work. "The original design has a safety limit that's too low. I'm bypassing some of the restrictions." Vextar felt his scales ripple with unease. "Those safety limits exist for good reasons, human." "Sure they do," Nari said. More sparks flew. "But they also make the weapon half as effective as it could be. The power output is limited to maybe 40% of what this thing can actually handle. And what happens when you push it beyond those limits?" Nari slid out from under the cannon, her face streaked with grease. She wiped her hands on a dirty rag and looked up at him with those dark human eyes. "Then it works better." This was exactly what worried Vextar about humans. They seemed to have no concept of proper safety margins. Every other species in the galaxy understood the importance of building systems that couldn't fail. Humans built systems that were always on the edge, a failure but somehow kept working anyway. "The pirates in this sector carry military-grade weapons," Vextar said. "If we encounter them, I need to know our defenses will function properly." "They'll function," Nari said. She turned back to her work. "Better than properly, actually." Vextar had heard stories about human engineering during his long career as a merchant captain. Most alien engineers wouldn't touch human-modified equipment. They said it was too dangerous, too unpredictable. Human technology had a reputation for being powerful but unstable. During the last war between the Terrans and the Altarian Empire, human ships had consistently defeated larger and more advanced alien vessels. The battles were studied in military academies across the galaxy. Nobody could explain how the humans did it. Their ships shouldn't have been able to win, but they did. "Tell me about your military service," Vextar said. Nari paused in her work. She didn't talk about her past very often. "What do you want to know?" "You were an engineer in the Terran Defense Corps." "For 8 years," she said, "mostly working on ship systems and weapons." "Why did you leave?" Nari was quiet for a long moment. "Got tired of the fighting, I guess. Wanted to see the galaxy without people shooting at me." But Vextar could see there was more to the story. Humans rarely did anything simple. There were always layers of meaning, hidden reasons behind their actions. The ship's computer chimed with an incoming message. Vextar activated the communication system, and a hologram appeared showing the face of Station Master Corvain from Kepler Trading Post. "Stellar Dawn, this is Kepler Station. We're tracking increased pirate activity in your sector. 3 merchant ships have been attacked in the past week. Recommend extreme caution on your approach." The hologram flickered and disappeared. Vextar felt his stomach turn cold. The HFY pirates were the worst kind of raiders. They didn't just steal cargo. They destroyed ships and killed crews for the fun of it. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "Nari." "I heard." She was already reaching for a different tool. "Good thing I've been working on this cannon." "How long until the modifications are complete?" "They're already complete," Nari said. "I've been testing and fine-tuning for the past month. The system is ready." Vextar looked at the plasma cannon with new eyes. It didn't look much different from the original mining laser, but he could see subtle changes. New cables ran along the barrel, and there were additional cooling vents near the base. A small control panel had been added next to the main firing controls. On the control panel, Vextar noticed a small piece of fabric sewn onto the surface. It looked like part of an old uniform, with some kind of military insignia. The colors had faded, but he could still make out the design. "What's that patch?" he asked. Nari glanced at the fabric and her expression softened slightly. "Just a reminder," she said. "From my old unit." She didn't explain further, and Vexitar didn't press the issue. Humans had their customs and their secrets. As long as she could keep the ship's weapons working, he didn't need to understand everything about her past. But as they prepared to enter the dangerous sector ahead, Vextar found himself hoping that whatever skills had kept Nari alive in the war would be enough to keep them both alive now. The Stellar Dawn continued its journey through space, carrying its cargo of rare metals and two very different crew members who were about to face their first real test together. The alarm screamed through the corridors of the Stellar Dawn like a wounded animal. Red warning lights flashed in every room, turning the ship's interior into a nightmare of shadows and crimson glare. Captain Vextar's claws clicked rapidly across the control panel as he tried to make sense of the sensor readings. 3 ships had appeared from behind a large asteroid, moving fast and closing the distance quickly. The sensor computer identified them as Ravager-class vessels, the preferred ships of HFY pirates. "Nari, get to the engine room," Vextar shouted into the communication system. "I need maximum power to the engines." "Already on it, Captain," came the reply. Through the ship's internal cameras, Vextar could see Nari running through the corridors, her tool belt bouncing against her hip. The first pirate ship opened fire without warning. Blue energy beams lanced through space, striking the Stellar Dawn's shields. The entire ship shuddered under the impact, and several control panels sparked and went dark. Vextar activated the emergency maneuvering system, sending the cargo ship into a steep dive toward the nearby planet. The old engines groaned under the strain, but they responded. The Stellar Dawn wasn't built for combat maneuvers, but it could still move when it had to. "Shield generators are damaged," Nari reported from the engine room. "I'm rerouting power, but we've lost about 60% of our defensive capability." Todiaustu, second pirate ship, fired a spread of missiles. Vexitar watched the deadly projectiles streak toward his ship on the main screen. He pulled the control stick hard to port, feeling the artificial gravity system struggle to compensate. 2 missiles missed, but the third struck the stern section. The explosion sent vibrations through the entire ship. Emergency systems activated, automatically, sealing off damaged sections and rerouting life support. But Vextar could see from his readouts that they had lost the navigation array and one of the main engine cooling systems. "Engine efficiency down to 70%. Nari called out, "The cooling system is failing. If we keep pushing like this, we'll have an engine overload in 10 minutes. The third pirate ship moved to cut off their escape route. Vextar realized they were being herded like prey animals. The HFY were experts at this kind of hunting. They would disable his ship piece by piece, then board it to take whatever they wanted. "Captain," Nari's voice came through the communication system again. "I need to bring the plasma cannon online." Vexitar felt his blood turn cold. The modified weapon system that Nari had been working on was completely untested in combat. For all he knew, it might explode the first time she tried to fire it. "Are you certain it will work?" he asked. "No," Nari replied honestly, "but it's our only chance." Another missile spread from the lead pirate ship forced Vextar to make his decision. The Stellar Dawn couldn't outrun 3 Ravager-class vessels, and their shields were already failing. If they were going to survive, they needed to fight back. "Do it," he said. "Bring the weapon online." Vextar could hear Nari moving through the ship, her footsteps echoing in the corridors as she ran toward the weapons bay. On his screen, he watched the pirates closing in for the kill. They were taking their time now, confident that their prey was helpless. The first pirate ship fired again, this time targeting the Stellar Dawn's remaining engine. The energy beam struck home, and Vextar felt the ship's acceleration drop to almost nothing. They were sitting ducks now. Plasma cannon. Powering up, Nari reported. Her voice was calm despite the chaos around them. Give me 30 seconds. 30 seconds felt like 30 years. The second pirate ship launched another missile spread, and this time Vextar couldn't dodge them all. 2 missiles struck the cargo. Hold. And he could hear the sound of metal tearing and atmosphere venting into space. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut automatically, but Vextar knew they were running out of ship. The Stellar Dawn could only take so much punishment before it came apart completely. 20 seconds, Nari called out. The lead pirate ship was moving into position for a final attack. Vextar could see weapon ports opening along its hull. The Kethmori were preparing to finish them off with a full broadside. Plasma cannon online, Nari announced. Targeting system active. Power levels at maximum. On his control panel, Vextar could see the weapon system status. The power readings were higher than anything he had ever seen from a mining laser. The energy output was approaching military-grade levels, which should have been impossible for a civilian ship. Warning, the ship's computer announced in its calm electronic voice. Plasma cannon operating beyond safety parameters. Recommend immediate shutdown. Ignore the warning, Nari said. I know what I'm doing. The first pirate ship fired its broadside. Dozens of energy beams streaked toward the Stellar Dawn, more firepower than any cargo ship should be able to survive. Vextar braced himself for the final impact, but at that moment Nari fired the plasma cannon. The beam that erupted from the Stellar Dawn was like a piece of the sun itself. It was blindingly bright, a lance of pure energy that cut through space, like a sword through silk. The targeting system that Nari had modified locked onto the lead pirate ship and held steady. The plasma beam struck the Ravager-class vessel directly amidships. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the pirate ship simply came apart. The hull melted like butter and the internal explosions tore the vessel into burning fragments. The other 2 pirate ships stopped their attack, clearly shocked by what they had just witnessed. A simple cargo hauler had just vaporized one of their companions with a single shot. Recharging for second shot, Nari reported. Her voice was still calm, as if destroying pirate ships was something she did every day. Vextar stared at his sensor readings in amazement. The plasma cannon had just delivered more destructive power than most military cruisers could manage. How had Nari managed to modify a simple mining laser into something that deadly? The remaining pirates were already beginning to retreat, but Vextar knew they wouldn't get far, not with Nari behind that impossible weapon. The plasma cannon charged for its second shot, and the sound filled the weapons bay like the growl of some massive predator. Nari stood at the control panel, her hands moving across the buttons and switches with practiced ease. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, but she ignored them completely. The power readings on her display climbed higher and higher, pushing into zones marked in red on every gauge. Any sane engineer would have shut down the system immediately, but Nari wasn't just any engineer. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the sound of the weapon charging. To most people, it would have been terrifying. To her, it was like music. Every component was singing in harmony, pushed to its absolute limit but still holding together. The memories came flooding back as she worked. The border war had lasted 3 years, and she had spent every day of it keeping impossible machines running under impossible conditions. The 47th Engineering Corps had been assigned to the front lines, where equipment failure meant death. She remembered her first week in the war zone. The Altarian Empire had better ships, better weapons, and better technology. Their plasma cannons could punch through any human shield, and their missiles never missed their targets. The human fleet should have been destroyed in the first month, but it wasn't. The secret wasn't better technology. The secret was human engineering philosophy. While the aliens built their systems to never fail, humans built their systems to fail, gracefully and keep working anyway. Nari opened her eyes and checked the power readings again. The plasma cannon was now operating at 97% of its theoretical maximum. Any alien engineer would have called this insane. The safety margins were completely gone. One small mistake could cause a catastrophic overload that would destroy the entire ship. But that was the difference between human and alien thinking. Aliens saw danger everywhere. Humans saw opportunity. The weapon finished charging and Nari turned her attention to the targeting system. The second pirate ship was trying to retreat, but its engines were cold-started and it was moving slowly. She locked onto its engine section and smiled grimly. "Second target acquired," she reported to Captain Vextar. "Are you sure the weapon can handle another shot?" the captain asked. His voice carried the worry that all non-humans felt when dealing with human technology. "It can handle it," Nari said. And she knew it could, because she had built it to handle exactly this kind of stress. During the war, her unit had earned a reputation for miracles. They could take damaged equipment that should have been scrapped and make it work better than new. They could modify simple tools into powerful weapons. They could keep entire starships running with spare parts that didn't even fit. The aliens never understood how they did it. Saurian engineers would study human modifications for months, trying to figure out how they worked. Most of the time they concluded that the systems shouldn't work at all. But they did work, and they worked magnificently. The key was understanding that every machine had hidden potential. The manufacturers built in safety limits, but those limits were usually much lower than the actual breaking point. A skilled engineer could find that breaking point and dance just on the edge of it. Nari had learned this lesson during her second year in the war. Her ship had been badly damaged in a battle with Altarian cruisers. The main engines were destroyed, the shields were down, and the weapon systems were offline. According to every manual and regulation, the ship was dead in space. But Nari had looked at the situation differently. The engines were destroyed, but the power core was still intact. The shields were down, but the generators were still functional. The weapons were offline, but the targeting computers were working perfectly. She had spent 18 hours jury-rigging a new power distribution system using spare parts from the food processors, the air recycling system, and even the crew's personal electronics. When she was done, the ship didn't just work, it worked better than it had before the battle. That was when she truly understood human engineering philosophy. Don't just fix what's broken, make it better. Don't just meet the specifications. Exceed them. Don't just solve the problem. Solve it so well that it never happens again. The plasma cannon beeped softly, indicating that all systems were ready for firing. Nari checked the targeting display one more time. The second pirate ship was still trying to escape, but it wouldn't get far. She thought about the patch sewn onto her control panel. The 47th Engineering Corps insignia was faded now, but she could still make out the motto beneath the unit symbol. Through innovation, victory. That motto had guided her through 3 years of war and 6 months of merchant service. It wasn't just about building better machines. It was about thinking differently, seeing possibilities where others saw only problems. The third pirate ship had turned to flee as well, but its captain was smarter than the others. Instead of running in a straight line, it was weaving between asteroids, trying to use the rocky debris as cover. It would be a challenging shot, but not impossible. Nari made a few adjustments to the targeting system, compensating for the asteroid field and the target's erratic movement. The plasma cannon could deliver precise fire at long range, but only if the operator understood how to use it properly. This was another thing that aliens didn't understand about human technology. They thought that better machines, automatically, meant better results. But humans knew that the most important component in any system was the person operating it. A mediocre engineer with excellent equipment would get mediocre results. But an excellent engineer with mediocre equipment could work miracles, and Nari had learned to work miracles a long time ago. "Firing," she announced, and pressed the trigger. The plasma cannon fired its second shot, and the beam lanced out across space toward the fleeing pirate ship. The energy struck the target's engine compartment with surgical precision, severing the power conduits and leaving the vessel dead in space. 2 down, 1 to go. The third pirate ship realized it was alone and changed tactics immediately. Instead of running, it turned to face the stellar dawn with all weapons charged. The Kethmori captain was experienced enough to know that retreat was no longer possible. If he was going to die, he would take the cargo ship with him. Captain Vexistar watched the enemy vessel on his main screen. It was moving fast, using the asteroid field for cover as it approached. The pirate ship would fire a spread of missiles, then duck behind a large rock before the plasma cannon could lock on. It was smart flying and it was working. "Nari," he called through the communication system. "The third ship is using hit-and-run tactics. Can you target it while it's moving between the asteroids?" "Working on it," came the reply from the weapons bay. "The targeting system is good, but it's not magic. I need a clear shot for at least 3 seconds. 3 seconds didn't sound like much, but in a high-speed space battle it might as well be 3 hours. The pirate captain wasn't going to give them that kind of opportunity. The enemy ship popped out from behind a massive asteroid and fired a full spread of missiles. 6 deadly projectiles streaked toward the stellar dawn, their guidance systems already locked onto the cargo ship's heat signature. Vextar activated the defensive systems, but with the shields damaged, there wasn't much protection left. 2 missiles struck the forward section, tearing holes in the hull and venting atmosphere into space. Another missile hit the port side, damaging the cargo bay doors. The ship shuddered under the impacts, and more warning lights appeared on the control panels. "Hull, breaches on decks 2 and 4, the computer announced. "Emergency bulkheads activated. Life support compromised in sections C through F." Vextar gritted his teeth. The Stellar Dawn was a tough old ship, but it couldn't take much more punishment. They needed to end this fight quickly, before the pirates got lucky and hit something critical. The plasma cannon charged for its third shot. Through the ship's internal cameras, Vextar could see Nari working frantically at the weapons controls. The power readings were even higher than before, pushing the system well beyond anything it was designed to handle. Warning alarms screamed in the weapons bay, but Nari ignored them completely. She had made adjustments to the targeting computer, trying to predict where the pirate ship would appear next. Her hands moved across the controls with incredible speed, making dozens of tiny calculations. The enemy ship appeared from behind another asteroid, this time much closer to the stellar dawn. The pirate captain was trying to get inside the minimum range of the plasma cannon, where the powerful weapon couldn't track fast enough to hit a moving target. But Nari had anticipated this move. She had already swung the cannon to the right position, and when the pirate ship appeared, she was ready. Her finger stabbed down on the firing button without hesitation. The plasma beam caught the enemy vessel in the middle of its attack run. The energy struck the ship's main hull and burned straight through to the other side. For a moment, the pirate ship kept flying, as if nothing had happened. Then internal explosions began tearing it apart from the inside. The enemy vessel broke into 3 large pieces, each one spinning away in a different direction. Secondary explosions lit up the debris field as fuel and ammunition cooked off in the vacuum of space. Within seconds, there was nothing left but scattered wreckage. Vextar stared at the sensor readings in amazement. 3 pirate ships destroyed in less than 10 minutes. The plasma cannon had performed far beyond anything he had thought possible. It had delivered the kind of firepower that usually required an entire squadron of military vessels. "All targets eliminated," Nari reported. Her voice was still calm, but Vexitar could hear the exhaustion beneath her words. Operating the modified weapon system at those power levels had to be incredibly demanding. "Outstanding work," Vextar replied. "Are you injured?" "I'm fine, Captain, but I need to shut down the plasma cannon and check for damage. We pushed it pretty hard today." Vextar began running diagnostics on the ship's other systems. The Stellar Dawn had taken significant damage, but nothing that couldn't be repaired. The hull breaches were sealed, life support was stabilizing, and the engines were still functional. More importantly, they were alive. A few hours ago, an encounter with 3 Kethmori raiders would have been a death sentence. Now they had not only survived, but won decisively. He left the bridge and walked through the ship's corridors, assessing the damage firsthand. The missile impacts had caused serious structural damage, and it would take days of work to get everything back to normal. But they were fortunate to be in one piece at all. Vextar found Nari in the weapons bay, lying on her back under the plasma cannon. She was running some kind of diagnostic scan, checking each component for signs of stress or failure. Her jumpsuit was soaked with sweat, and her face was streaked with grease and soot. "How does it look?" he asked. "Better than I expected," she replied. "The power coupling is slightly overheated, and one of the cooling lines developed a small crack. But overall, the system held together beautifully." Vexitar looked at the weapon with new respect. The plasma cannon didn't look like much from the outside. It was still basically a mining laser, with some additional components bolted on. But the modifications that Nari had made turned it into something extraordinary. "I've never seen anything like that performance," he admitted. "How did you know it would work?" Nari slid out from under the cannon and wiped her hands on a dirty rag. She looked tired, but there was satisfaction in her dark eyes. "I didn't know for certain. But I built it right, so I was confident it would hold together." "Built it right. According to human standards, you mean?" "According to any standards that matter," she said with a slight smile. "Sometimes you have to trust your engineering and let the machine do what it was designed to do." Vextar realized that he was beginning to understand something important about humans and their relationship with technology. They didn't just build machines, they created partnerships with them. They pushed their equipment to the limit, but they also understood exactly where that limit was. It was a dangerous way to work, but it was also incredibly effective. And in a galaxy full of pirates and hostile aliens, effectiveness mattered more than safety margins. "Get some rest," he told Nari. "We'll be at the trading station in 4 hours. You've earned it." As he walked back toward the bridge, Vextar found himself thinking about the battle they had just survived. 3 heavily armed pirate ships destroyed by a single human engineer with a modified mining laser. It was the kind of story that would be told in spacer bars for years to come. But, more than that, it was a lesson in the power of human ingenuity. 2 hours after the battle, Captain Vextar found himself walking back to the weapons bay. The immediate repairs were complete, and the ship was running smoothly again. But his mind kept returning to what he had witnessed during the fight. The plasma cannon's performance had been extraordinary, but it was more than just the weapon itself. It was the way Nari had operated it, pushing the system to its absolute limits without hesitation or fear. She had treated the dangerous, overloaded weapon like a musical instrument, coaxing maximum performance from every component. He found her in the weapons bay, as he expected. She was sitting on a maintenance stool, carefully cleaning and inspecting each part of the plasma cannon's control system. Her movements were precise and methodical, the work of someone who truly understood her equipment. "How are the repairs coming along?" Vextar asked. "Almost finished," Nari replied without looking. "The power coupling needed to be recalibrated, and I replaced the cracked cooling line. She'll be ready for action again in a few hours." Vextar noticed that she referred to the weapon as she, like it was a living thing. Humans had odd relationships with their machines, treating them almost like partners rather than simple tools. As he watched her work, his eyes fell on the small patch sewn onto the control panel. In the better lighting of the weapons bay, he could see it more clearly now. The fabric was faded military green, with an embroidered insignia showing crossed tools over a stylized star field. Below the insignia, in letters so small he had to step closer to read them, were the words 47th Engineering Corps, and beneath that a motto, "Through innovation, victory." Recognition hit Vextar like a physical blow. His golden eyes widened and his scales rippled with sudden understanding. He knew that insignia. He knew that unit. During the border war, he had served as a military observer, watching human and Altarian forces clash across dozens of star systems. "You were with the 47th Engineering Corps," he said quietly. Nari's hand stilled on her work. She looked up at him, and he could see wariness in her dark eyes. "Yes." "The miracle workers," Vextar whispered. The 47th Engineering Corps had been legendary during the war. They were the unit that kept human ships fighting when they should have been dead in space. They were the engineers who turned civilian equipment into military weapons, who made repairs that shouldn't have been possible, who found solutions to impossible problems. Vextar had seen their work firsthand during the Battle of Kepler Station. A human cruiser had been severely damaged, with most of its systems offline and its hull breached in dozens of places. Any reasonable commander would have ordered the crew to abandon ship. Instead, the 47th Engineering Corps had worked for 18 hours straight, jury-rigging repairs and modifications that defied every principle of safe engineering. When they were done, the damaged cruiser had more firepower than it had possessed when it was new. That ship went on to destroy 3 Altarian battleships in single combat. "I watched your unit work during the war," Vextar said. "I was a junior observer with the Saurian Defense Force assigned to study human combat tactics." Nari's expression softened slightly. "What did you think of what you saw?" "I thought you were all insane," Vextar admitted. "The things your people did with damaged equipment should have been impossible. The safety margins you operated within should have killed everyone involved. But they didn't. No, they didn't. And that's what I never understood. How did you know the systems wouldn't fail? How did you calculate risks that no computer could analyze?" Nari set down her tools and leaned back against the plasma cannon. She was quiet for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal about herself and her past. "It wasn't about calculating risks," she said finally. "It was about understanding the equipment so well that you knew exactly what it could handle. Every machine has limits, but those limits are usually much higher than the manufacturer claims. But what if you're wrong? What if you push too hard and everything explodes? Then you die," Nari said simply. "But if you don't push hard enough, you die anyway. During the war, playing it safe was the most dangerous thing you could do." Vextar understood now why the patch was sewn onto her control panel. It wasn't just a reminder of her military service. It was a statement of philosophy, a declaration of her approach to engineering and to life itself. "Through innovation, victory," he read aloud. "That was our motto," Nari confirmed. It meant that the solution to any problem was to think differently, to find new ways of doing things. We didn't have better equipment than the Altarians, so we had to use our equipment better. And that's what you did here today. You turned a mining laser into a weapon that could destroy military vessels." "I turned it into what it was always capable of being," Nari corrected. "The potential was already there. I just removed the artificial limitations that were holding it back." Vextar looked at the plasma cannon with new understanding. It wasn't just a modified weapon. It was a perfect example of human engineering philosophy. Take something ordinary and push it beyond all reasonable limits until it became extraordinary. "Why did you leave the military?" he asked. Nari was quiet again, and when she spoke, her voice carried old pain. "The war ended, but the fighting didn't stop. There were always new conflicts, new enemies, new reasons to push machines and people beyond their breaking points. I got tired of fixing things just so they could be broken again. So you became a merchant engineer. I thought it would be peaceful," she said with a bitter laugh. "Turns out there are pirates in merchant space too. But you're still fighting, I'm still surviving, and I'm still innovating. The 47th Corps taught me that there's always a solution, even when there doesn't seem to be one. You just have to be willing to push boundaries that other people won't cross." Vextar felt a deep respect growing for this small human woman. She had seen the worst that the galaxy could offer, had survived battles that destroyed entire fleets, and had chosen to use her skills to protect rather than to conquer. "I'm glad you're on our side," he said. Nari smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her since she joined the crew. "So am I, Captain. So am I." The Stellar Dawn docked at Kepler Trading Station 6 hours later. The massive space station rotated slowly against the backdrop of stars, its lights twinkling like a small city in the void. Dozens of ships from across the galaxy were moored to its docking arms, creating a forest of metal and ceramic hulls. Captain Vextar walked through the station's main corridor alongside Nari, both of them heading toward the repair facilities. The Stellar Dawn needed hull patches and new components, damage from their encounter with the Kethmori pirates, but they were alive to need repairs. which was more than most crews could say after facing 3 Ravager-class vessels. "Captain Vextar," called a familiar voice. They turned to see Station Master Corvain approaching, his forearms gesturing excitedly. The insectoid alien's compound eyes glittered with curiosity. "We received your battle report. 3 pirate ships destroyed? With a mining laser?" "With a modified plasma cannon," Vexitar corrected. "My engineer made some improvements to the original design." Corvain's eyes swiveled to focus on Nari. "You're human," he observed, as if this explained everything. "I should have guessed. Only humans would think to weaponize civilian mining equipment." "Only humans would make it work," Nari replied calmly. Word of their victory had already spread throughout the station. Other merchants approached them as they walked, wanting to hear the story firsthand. Some looked skeptical, others amazed, but all of them were curious about the human engineer who had turned a cargo ship into a warship. "How much power were you pushing through that system?" asked Captain Zaris, a veteran freighter pilot with 30 years of experience. "The energy readings in your report seem impossible." "About 97% of theoretical maximum," Nari answered. The alien captain's face went pale. 97%? You should be dead. No system can operate at that level without catastrophic failure." "Human systems can," Nari said simply. This was the conversation that Vextar had been expecting. Every alien engineer they met would have the same reaction. They would study Nari's modifications and declare them unsafe. They would calculate failure probabilities and predict disasters. They would never understand how the systems actually worked. But Vextar was beginning to understand. Over the past few hours, he had thought carefully about everything he had witnessed during the battle. The plasma cannon hadn't just performed beyond specifications. It had performed exactly as Nari had designed it to perform. She hadn't been lucky. She hadn't been reckless. She had been precise in her calculations and conservative in her approach. It was just that her definition of conservative was completely different from everyone else's. "There's something I want to show you," Vextar told Nari as they finished their business at the station. They walked back toward the docking bay where the Stellar Dawn was moored. He led her to his private quarters, a small but comfortable space filled with books and artifacts from his many years of traveling. On one wall hung a collection of military commendations and service medals from his time as a naval observer. "I told you I watched your unit during the war," he said, opening a storage locker. "But I didn't tell you how closely I watched." He pulled out a thick folder filled with reports, photographs, and technical specifications. The folder was labeled Human Engineering Capabilities Assessment in both Saurian and Terran Standard. "I was assigned to write a comprehensive analysis of human combat engineering," Vextar explained. "My superiors wanted to understand how human forces were achieving impossible victories with inferior equipment." Nari opened the folder and began reading through the documents. There were detailed analyses of human ship modifications, interviews with captured human engineers, and technical drawings showing the internal workings of human weapons systems. "What did you conclude?" she asked. "That human engineering wasn't inferior at all," Vexistar said. "It was just different. Where other species designed systems to never fail, humans designed systems to fail gracefully and continue operating. Where others built in huge safety margins, humans operated right at the edge of those margins." He pulled out a specific report from the middle of the folder. "This is my analysis of the Battle of Kepler Station, where the damaged cruiser destroyed 3 Altarian battleships. I spent months trying to understand how the 47th Engineering Corps made those repairs work. And what did you figure out? That you didn't make broken systems work. You made them work better than they ever had before. Every modification served multiple purposes. Every repair solved not just the immediate problem, but prevented future ones. It was elegant engineering disguised as emergency patchwork." Nari smiled as she read through his technical analysis. "You understood us better than most of our own commanders did. I understood the results. It took me until today to understand the philosophy behind them." Vextar walked to his desk and picked up a small device that looked like a communicator. "This is a standard Saurian emergency beacon. It's designed to operate for 72 hours on a single power cell, with multiple, redundant systems to ensure it never fails. He handed the device to Nari. A human engineer would look at this and see wasted potential. You would strip out half the redundant systems, overclock the power supply, and probably get a week of operation out of the same power cell. And if it failed, people would die, Nari pointed out. But it wouldn't fail, because you would understand exactly how far you could push it. That's the difference between human and alien engineering. You don't just build machines, you develop relationships with them. Over the next hour, they discussed engineering philosophy and design principles. Vextar shared his observations from the war, while Nari explained the thinking behind various human modifications and improvements. It was a conversation that bridged the gap between two very different ways of understanding technology. "I have a proposal for you," Vextar said as their discussion wound down. "I want to offer you a permanent position as chief engineer of the Stellar Dawn. Not just crew, but partner. Equal shares in the profits, equal say in the destinations we choose." Nari looked surprised. "Why?" "Because I've learned something important today. Having a human engineer isn't a liability. It's the best insurance policy a ship can have in a dangerous galaxy." She was quiet for a moment, considering the offer. "What about the other crew members you were planning to hire?" "I've decided we don't need them. You've proven that one skilled engineer is worth more than a dozen average ones." Nari reached into her jumpsuit pocket and pulled out a small piece of fabric, identical to the patch on her control panel. She handed it to Vextar with a smile. "This is a spare patch from my old unit. If we're going to be partners, you should understand what it means to work with the 47th Engineering Corps." Vextar examined the faded fabric, reading the motto again. "Through innovation, victory." "I think I'm beginning to understand," he said. They shook hands, sealing their partnership. As they walked back toward the weapons bay, Vextar felt a sense of excitement about the future that he hadn't experienced in years. "There's one more thing I want to do," Nari said, as they entered the weapons bay. She opened a small tool kit and pulled out a needle and thread. Working carefully, she sewed the Stellar Dawn's crew emblem onto the control panel next to her military patch. The ship's emblem was simple, a stylized star surrounded by a circle, representing the endless journey through space, but placed next to the 47th Engineering Corps insignia, it took on new meaning. It represented the bridge between human innovation and alien wisdom, between military precision and civilian purpose. "Perfect," Vextar said, admiring her work. Over the next several hours, they worked together to complete the repairs from the battle. Vextar found himself learning things about ship maintenance that he had never known before. Nari showed him how to identify stress fractures before they became dangerous, how to optimize power distribution for maximum efficiency, and how to modify standard components for better performance. "The key is to understand that every system has hidden potential," she explained as they calibrated the plasma cannon's targeting computer. "Manufacturers build things to work under the worst possible conditions. But if you know your equipment and maintain it properly, you can usually get much better performance than the specifications claim." As they worked, other merchants and engineers from the station stopped by to observe. Word had spread about the impossible modifications to the Stellar Dawn's weapons system, and everyone wanted to see the human engineering techniques for themselves. Most of the alien observers left shaking their heads in confusion or concern, but a few stayed to ask detailed questions, genuinely curious about the human approach to technology. Nari answered them patiently, explaining her modifications and the reasoning behind them. "You're going to start a revolution in engineering practices," Vextar observed with amusement. "Maybe," Nari replied. "Or maybe I'll just prove that there's more than one way to solve a problem." 3 days later, the Stellar Dawn departed from Kepler Trading Station with a full cargo hold and a reputation that would open doors throughout the sector. The ship that had arrived as a simple freight hauler was leaving as something much more significant. Proof that human and alien crews could work together to achieve extraordinary things. As they cleared the station's traffic control zone and engaged the faster T,